Good morning, everyone. So before we get started, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping items so you all know how to participate in today's event. So at any time during the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to our speaker, Liam. So to do so, just type your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the control panel. So not in the chat function, but the Q&A. And as time allows, I'll ask as many questions as I can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If time does not permit for all of your questions to be answered, then please email your questions to careers@glasgow.ac.uk and we'll forward them on to Liam. Okay. Also to be aware that we will be recording this webinar and we'll share the link after the event. So just for those of you who are not familiar with the Big Brave, let me tell you a bit about this. The Big Brave is the closing event for each of our careers fairs. And it offers you the opportunity to hear a career story from an ambitious and accomplished person who's achieved success due to their bravery, passion, and sheer determination to make an impact. This Q&A is designed to answer the pressing questions that are relevant to you right now and in the future. And we do have lots of Big Braves scheduled this semester. So I recommend that you have a look at Glasgow Careers website to find out more about our great speakers. So today I am delighted to welcome Liam Nugent, who is an electronic engineering graduate from the University of Glasgow. He is the CEO of We.Soccer, a sports data capture app that provides pro-level data for grassroots football. It's currently being piloted in the SPFL and in the Scottish Women's Football League. Before that, Liam co-founded Greenhill Design and Technology, which was a Scottish software design practice that produced award-winning web and smartphone apps for a client list that included Red Bull, Nestle, Just Eat and Betfair. He also co-founded eStage Manager, a software event management platform that helped manage Tea in the Park for over 12 years. Okay, so thank you for coming along today, Liam. I wonder just to get started, if you can just tell us in your own words, your career story so far.
Okay, well, we've only got half an hour, so it's a long and winding road. But starting off from university, I got a degree in electronic engineering and I studied electronics with music at the University of Glasgow. Got my degree and then headed out into the world. At the time, I was very interested in music. So actually, I kind of went off and played in a band and got a record deal with EMI and did all that for a couple of years, which was great. And then people stopped buying CDs and that happened and that was the end of that. So basically that was the kind of the launching pad. And throughout university, and when I kind of came back to Glasgow, I worked in a music shop and a guitar store, selling guitars on Saturdays and on the holidays and all that kind of stuff. So that was cool. And basically my career started really by landing back into the guitar store when I came back to Glasgow saying, I need a job, can I get some work to keep me going for a few weeks? And then basically started there and ended up sticking about there for too long, basically. And what happened was I wanted to do it for a few months while I thought I better do something with my electronics degree. And then the company wanted to start a website. So they said, you know a bit about computers, why don't you get involved in that? And basically I got sucked deeper and deeper into that. And then as that was happening, the company was growing really quickly. So it went from having 3 or 4 shops in Scotland to having 27 shops all over the UK and all that. So basically what happened was that I got more and more involved in the marketing and the tech and building the website. And the website grew from nothing. You know, this was like 2001, 2002. Grew from nothing to then being a big part of the business, you know, and doing £1 million a year worth of business and all that. So that was really cool. But what it ended up doing is that my career just kind of organically grew as the world changed at that time. Yeah. And I got to the point where I was the e-commerce and digital marketing manager for this business, which was a big business, 65 million a year or something they turned over. And there was only one job above me, which was the marketing director, and he wasn't going anywhere because he had shares in the place. So I decided that the bit I loved most about the job was the tech. So I went looking and very quickly found a job with an agency in Glasgow who they built, websites for. There was a TV channel at the time called Setanta, who did a lot of the sports, so like Old Firm football matches and European games and all that kind of stuff. So basically, I kind of moved into working with this agency, solely working on that project as just the kind of fixer. So I could code a bit, I could design a bit, but I wouldn't pretend to be good, really good at either of them. But got involved as the kind of guy who would get things done, and stayed with them for a few years. That Setanta grew really quickly, so again that grew really quickly, and that exposed me to basically a lot of kind of web design and web development business, and partnering with a lot of agencies down in London. So I went down there for a bit. Setanta, we worked very closely with them, so we ended up having to go into their office down in Kew Gardens in London. 2 days a month, someone had to be there from our agency to help them and all that. So that kind of became my job. And then from there, I was working in this agency. People would phone up saying, we want to, we've got a new football, like England football matches are going to start showing in Setanta in a month's time. We want to make a lot of noise about this, but we don't even have a way for people to sign up online yet. So we need to build an online e-commerce platform to let people sign up. So I just kind of got involved deeper and deeper into that stuff. And after a while, thought, well, this is all good, but I had my own ideas about how things should run. And, I got on well with the owners of the business and all that, but I thought, I could probably do this a different way myself. So I decided at that point to just kind of take the step and open up what was Greenhill. And that's the kind of like main route of career to get to Greenhill. There's another route as well on the side of that, which is when I was working in a guitar store, I also, it was almost as a hobby because I couldn't see it as work. I worked with a company called DF Concerts who run all the gigs in Glasgow. They ran Tea in the Park. They ran, their kind of base was a place called King Tut's in Glasgow in St Vincent Street. So I would go in there and help organise gigs. So run the place for a night and, sell all the tickets and do all the money, pay all the people, all that kind of stuff. So I used to do that on a Saturday as a kind of side job, side gig, because I loved the music and I loved kind of being in the scene. And through that, I got asked to come and work at Tea in the Park, which is, the same people. So basically, when Tea in the Park comes round, it's all hands on deck. So everyone gets pulled in to work on that. And I went and I worked at Tea in the Park on what they called artist reception. So all the tour buses pull up with Snoop Doggy Dogg or Beyonce or whoever. They come off the bus and there was like a wee, tent there to meet them, to bring them in, take them to the dressing rooms, get them to the stage, all the kind of boring stuff about putting on a gig. So I did that for a year in the reception area. And the way that it was run was like World War II. It was this tent in a field with a big table, with a big bit of paper on it, with all the logistics written on this bit of paper. And people would literally tick them off on this big, grid on the table. And as I was watching this happen, it was really inefficient and you had to radio people all the time and all that. And you can guess what's coming. I kind of saw this and thought, we could do this, with some tech much, much better. So I kind of went to the owners of Tea in the Park and said, here's an idea. And I'd drawn it out, how it could look and how it would work, and said, I think we should do this. They thought, oh, wow, what a great idea. Let's do it. How much will it cost? So I kind of thought, right, okay. And I pulled in a guy who I was at school with, who was a better coder than me. And we kind of came up with a plan and went back to them and said, here's what it will take to do that. And they said, no chance, we're never going to pay that. No, but that was okay, because what we said was, tell you what, then we'll build it and we'll just charge you a fee to use it every year. And we did that. And then we kind of put it in place, and we basically built a system that started off just, booking in bands, but then it grew to booking in staff. It grew to then doing all the guest tickets. It grew to, parts of it that the artists in the weeks before the concert, you might not know this, but they all get in touch to say, we're going to bring, 100 lights and a big video wall, and our truck will get there on Sunday at 10 o'clock at night. Will someone be there to open the gate and all that kind of stuff? So basically our system grew to kind of support all the major parts of running the festival year on year, and it ran for like 13 years.
Yeah.
So that was great because I also worked at the thing, helping run the gig. Our system was getting used, and so basically, as I was working in the day job, in the music company selling musical equipment, that was a kind of side hustle which grew and grew and grew, and it just kind of gave me the confidence basically. So when it got to the point where I thought, I know how to do this, let's give it a go ourselves, and I just kind of went off, took the leap, set up Greenhill. Knew a guy who was a coder who worked in another agency, who I got on really well with. He was looking to make a move as well, so he came in with me, and then for 10 years we just grew this business in Glasgow. So up near the university, just at Park Circus, we had a nice wee office up there, and then through contacts I'd made at Setanta, through all sorts of people I'd met, we just managed to attract enough work to keep going. And our philosophy was, when you kind of set off in a career, unless you're like a doctor where you know that you're going to start when you're 16, go to university for 5 years, do your training, and it's all set out, and you know that when you're 40 you'll sign up as a consultant and that's the job that you will literally do until you retire. That's that kind of doesn't really work in tech or in engineering as far as I could see. The way I would characterize it is that you always know what's going to happen for 3 months. You know that you've got a project that's going to run for 3 months or maybe 6, and then after that it's just a black hole. Nothing. You couldn't say to a bank manager or anyone exactly what's going to happen. But what I found is that if you just make a good go of what's in front of you, that the 6 months always stays 6 months away.
Yeah.
So you never get to the point where it's your head in your hands and you don't know what you're going to do. There's always something rolls on, as long as you're kind of honest and straightforward and you do a good job for someone. It always just kind of seems to work out. So that gets me to Greenhill. Is that enough for?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about Greenhill and about the soccer platform soon. But I mean, what you're really describing is a massively busy and diverse career, but really getting to follow your passions. So, I mean, students, if they have got particular passions, even if they think it's something that's very competitive and hard to get into, if you take that proactive approach and you reach out and make connections like you've done and make a good impression on people, then it is absolutely possible, isn't it?
Completely. And I know it's a cliche, but for me, it's been true. Like, I've never worked a day in my life, is the kind of, and people laugh, but, when I was 16, I really wanted to be in a band. That was the thing that kind of got me out of bed in the morning. So that's what I was kind of focused on. And, I wasn't like, it wasn't like it was a wee mini business and I, sent out cards to people and all that kind of stuff. But, in that world, it was my passion. So I indulged it. I got hold of a guitar. I worked out how to play the kind of music I liked, and I worked out how to do it, and spent hours and hours and hours and hours seemingly doing nothing other than kind of moving about. But what I was doing, I realised, is building up like a toolkit. So when it came to music, for instance, we're talking about music, and I'll give other examples about tech. Like, so with music, you started off, you wanted to play a particular song, you learned it, and then you wanted to make it sound exactly like the record. So you would sit and work out exactly what you needed to do, what pedals you needed, and what kind of guitar you needed, and how to do the settings in your amp. And you would basically spend a few hours on that one night, and then that would get filed away. And then the next night you try something else, and that would get filed away. And what I meant is that, fast forward 3 years, I'm in recording studio in London, super cool studio. George Michael's, and we're in room number 3. George Michael's in room number 2, and Madonna's in room number 1. So it's like a real cool place, and you go to lunch, and you're sitting, in a canteen with all these people who you've admired your whole life, and you're in that room, and then when the producer says, "Oh, what do you think we should do?" You think to yourself, "Oh, we should make it sound like that bit from, I don't know, like a Guns N' Roses record." And then he says, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea," and you can think back to when you were sitting in your bedroom 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and you remembered and you worked out the settings to put on, and then you can do it, and then you can bring it to the party, and it can be useful. And that kind of same thing happens all the way through. Like, I now, I have to be an expert in UX and, customer experience design, and I need to know all that stuff. All of that, there's formal ways you can learn about it, and that's all good. But really, the chops, you would say, came from, eStage Manager. When I'm designing this thing to be used, now I had no UX training and no, customer experience training. I just knew what needed to be built. I used Excel to lay out how the design would work and how the forms would work, and just spent, about 3 months, every couple of nights, an hour or two, just going back over it and doing a bit more work. At this point, there was no guarantee of it being a thing. There was no guarantee of money being attached to it. This was just, I had the idea that, if I was going to do Tea in the Park again the following year, this is how I would want to do it. So you just put in a bit of, not like a waste of time, because life gets in the way. So when I would sit down to do it, you would just spend a couple of hours really thinking about what was going to work, thinking about what the problems would be, drawing it all out. And that became the foundation then for a system that went on and had, hundreds of thousands of users over years and years and years, did a good job for people. And the point is that it comes from just like, I didn't sit down after my dinner and go, oh no, tonight's the night I need to draw these forms out for how we're going to get an artist to check in at Tea in the Park. I finished my dinner and I was like, right, cool, I'm going to have a think about this and, draw it all out. And if it comes to something, great. And if it doesn't, well, that was just for my own interest, almost, So that's really, I suppose, what you're drawing out there, is that if you're passionate about something, and again, it sounds like a million cliches, but if you're just interested in it, it's not work. It's not a drudge. It's just, sometimes there's boring stuff to thought through, but it's all kind of leading towards doing something that is, of interest to you. And then you tend to find that things that interest you, if you actually make something out of it, then people will all want to join in and kind of get involved and, add their influence and expertise to it as well.
Well, we talk as careers advisors about planned happenstance, about really putting yourself in a position to be lucky and succeed in your career. But it's all about this enthusiasm and just sharing with other people and that willingness to commit to further learning, isn't it, really? And just, you've had so many interesting parts of your career path. This might be difficult to answer, but what do you think are the particular highlights for you? What are the achievements you're particularly proud of? Maybe the things that were maybe quite tough, or just that you really feel a sense of pride in your achievements?
Yeah, so I suppose I haven't really stopped to look back much. At the beginning, like when I was a wee guy, Feed the World was on the TV, all the folk with their headphones in that big studio. So a highlight was I recorded in that studio.
Amazing.
So that was cool. I was literally in the room making a record. So that was one cool highlight. I've put on. So in fact, another engineering student from Glasgow University, Simon, from Biffy Clyro, he was the year below me in electronics and music, and I keep in touch a wee bit with him. There was a point where I played in bands as well when I was at uni, and we used to do gigs at the same in what was it called? The top floor of the QM, the cafeteria in there. Above Jim's bar, it used to be, there was and all that. So we did gigs in there. So there was a cool thing at the last Tea in the Park in Balado. They were headlining it. So, we were kind of standing talking about, before we went on stage, it was like, wow, this is cool. I'm here, doing all the tech stuff. You guys have managed to keep playing music for a living, and that's cool. So that was a good moment. And then, then there's just the cheesy stuff, like the day that we put the sign on the building at Greenhill. It's like the Godfather. You stood outside and looked at the building and went, well, it's tangible, it's real. I suppose there's just lots of like last week at We.Soccer, we did a trial of our system at Albion Rovers versus Stenhousemuir. So, at the same time, there was an Old Firm game going on. But that was cool. We have thought of an idea, built the software, got it in people's hands, and then, Albion Rovers, who are like 130 years old football club, part of the kind of fabric of Coatbridge, it got used on the pitch that, Jock Stein used to play on, all that kind of stuff. So I suppose it's just like lots of wee mini, because like I suppose when I think back, loads of cool stuff's happened. But you just kind of enjoy it in the moment, and then I suppose when I'm 20 years ahead of me, I'll maybe sit down and write it all down one day. But for now, I'm just kind of getting on with it.
I'd like to take you back again and do a bit of reminiscing. Going back to before you even chose to go to Glasgow University to do electronic engineering. Obviously, you're interested in the music at that point, but you're at school and thinking about going to university. And I mean, tell me about your career choice back then. What was it that took you onto an electronic engineering degree?
So my father was a solicitor, and I kind of thought, that's just what you do then, is you can, go to school, go to university, be a lawyer, and, that would be it. Because I suppose I never really thought about it in any kind of, I wasn't super considered about it, early in secondary school. And then as it got close to kind of having to think about it, my father's advice was, don't be a lawyer. So I was like, right, okay. So that kind of left me like a wee bit, because I just assumed that's what I would have done. So I kind of thought about that, and then looked around. I knew that because I was, musical at school and all that. So I knew that the music was a thing. Wasn't sure that I wanted to kind of go like off and to be like an orchestral player or anything like that. Wasn't sure that doing it, like certainly at school, I wasn't thinking I'm going to now go and be in a band. Like I had an expectation of myself that I wanted to go to university and kind of do something and get a degree. So I just kind of settled on like engineering and physics and all that, was always kind of came easy, as you would say at school. So that kind of factored in. And then when I saw Glasgow, well, two things happened. I applied for Oxford University, and back in those days, you sat an exam to do it. So I sat the exam, and I then got offered an interview. And, I don't know if you know, it's an involved process. You kind of go and stay for a few days and all that. So I went down and did the interviews and got feedback straight away, which was, you should go off and do music. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So that was a one track. And then the other was at Glasgow. They did the electronics degree with music. And I kind of thought, that's the one. I kind of, once all the dust was settling, I thought, that's what I want to do. Because I think the other option at the time was Imperial College in England did physics with music. And I kind of was like, I don't know about physics, that's too abstract. I kind of liked it. And the other kind of big misunderstanding, which was fine for me, was the degree at that time wasn't like electronic music, as it were. It wasn't about making music synthesizers. It was electronics. And then on a Wednesday afternoon, you went off and wrote some essays on, Bach or whatever it would be. So that was fine. Yeah, so that's what took me to Glasgow.
What do you think were the main areas of development from your degree? What did you get from it?
So what I got from it, some of the electronic stuff, actually, I mean, I have to confess, I was not the world's best student. A load of folk in my class who went off to Wolfram Electronics and, Rockstar Games and all that, they were good friends and, they were kind of quite set on it. If I'm honest, I was more distracted by what was going on, playing gigs and all that kind of stuff, so there was a tension definitely throughout that point. But what I got from it was meeting I don't mean meeting people as in hanging about the cafeteria at lunchtime. I mean, there was a guy in the electronics degree when I was there, in second year, a load of Greek guys would come in and join the class. So that was fine. You got to meet a load of guys from Greece and kind of, broaden your horizons that way. And then in third year, there used to be, or maybe there still is, a contingent from Singapore would come across.
Mm-hmm.
Like the engineering degree would get another 20 students from Singapore would come in as a block. So I got teamed up with a guy called Kelvin. So that was kind of good to just kind of, I still use some of the concepts, like some of the stuff, the electronic stuff does actually factor into, it's the foundation on which all the tech we're using is built. So the concepts are still the same. So I got some of that actual academic grounding in spite of myself almost. But it was kind of meeting the folk and broadening your horizons.
Yeah.
And also like the kind of developing some personal agency. So my lecturers would argue that I directed it in the wrong way, because I would spend more energy fixing up a gig for 3 bands at the weekend in the QM union. But that's what came out of it, the fact that if you wanted to do it, you could, and all you had to do was get organised and get on with it.
Your time at university is not just about what you're doing on course anyway, is it? I mean, we're always telling students, choose what you would enjoy and what you'd be good at, but also think about the wider university time in terms of how you're developing yourself, building up your skills, and also confidence through these extracurricular activities too can be just as important, if not more so sometimes.
Yeah, and I guess my experience at university was slightly different from most in that my best friend from school chose, and this wasn't a kind of deliberate thing,
Mm-hmm.
he chose the same course.
Right.
So we ended up, like the two of us, were then just, we had like I said to you earlier on, we had a maths lecture at 9 o'clock every day, 4 years, which, we went to, we didn't dodge very much. But that was fine. So there was a bit of an element of carrying on where you left off from school,
Mm-hmm.
and because my school was just the other side of Kelvin Grove Park.
Yeah.
So it's very much a continuation of, that kind of life.
And you've continued to be based in Glasgow, which is, I think, interesting for a lot of students, because even the students who come to Glasgow from elsewhere like to stay in Glasgow a lot of the time. That's something we see in terms of destinations afterwards, that Glasgow's a sticky city as a university city. So was that something you aimed to do, or is it just kind of happened that way?
Well, no. So, I was born in Glasgow. I've, from my family life, was raised all in Glasgow the whole time. Went to stayed in Glasgow for university. Mm-hmm. I have done kind of stints, gone off for a bit.
Yeah.
I find Glasgow's particularly well placed. So, about 10 years ago, I did a stint for about 6 months where I had a job in London. I was working in London Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
But I lived in Glasgow. So what I would do is I would go down on Monday morning, and then like the job had a serviced apartment, place that you stayed, or a hotel you could stay.
Yeah.
So I would go down first thing on a Monday morning. And basically the way I kind of figured it out, because, by this point I was married and, my wife, she worked in Edinburgh. I realised that if I went down to work on a Monday morning, I would usually then just like, at that time, you'd be kind of working hard and working a wee bit late anyway. So you would kind of work late, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then on a Friday, you would get up and go into the office, and then at lunchtime, come and get a flight back to Glasgow and meet the guys in Glasgow and the girls in Glasgow.
Yeah.
So I really liked that, because I had the option to move down. But for me, the commute actually wasn't too bad. And I like the scenery around here. I grew up in the north of the city, so the campsies are always kind of in the background. I like, a wee bit of like fishing and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I was kind of like, well, the way that our diaries worked, we knew that we would probably only kind of hang around with each other on a Wednesday night anyway. So I was like, well, for one night a week where you'd kind of be hanging about together, actually, it's not that big of a thing. So that's what I did, and that worked out quite well. Then you come back to Glasgow, and it's, well, I suppose I do feel that sometimes it's on the edge, like in the flight network and stuff like that. Like if you're in America, you'll have a long flight and it'll get you back to London, and then you kind of think, you're with someone and they're like, okay, well, I'm now jumping in a taxi to go home, and you've got that one more hop to do back to Glasgow. So there's no getting away from the fact that it is kind of on the fringes of that, but it is on it, it is connected. But that is, if you've been up with a rubbish night's sleep and then it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh, I need to wait till 9 o'clock, flight back to Glasgow. That is a bit of a pain. But that happens once every 6 months or once a year or something like that. It's not having to deal with that every day. But it's a nice place.
Yeah.
There's loads of stuff happening in it. So
and that there is definitely, in terms of lots of sectors, lots of opportunities here. So it's certainly something that students can think about. Now, some of them have come in with some questions now, so I think they want to know a bit more about We.Soccer. So one of the students has asked, how has your business responded to COVID due to the fact that grassroots football has to stop during lockdown? Okay,
so it meant that we couldn't send people to grassroots football matches to help sell the system or trial the system. So in one respect, that was a challenge. But what happened off the back of it was our system, to give you a very kind of brief outline, the system, what it allows you to do is, use a smartphone for organising football matches. So before the game, coach, put the teams in and send them to the referee. The two coaches can do it, both send them to the referee, and then the referee uses the smartphone on their arm, and instead of a notepad and pencil, they then say kick-off happens, goal happens, yellow card happens, whatever. The fact that we digitise that process, because at the moment in grassroots football, it's all paper. So people literally write out the team sheets, copy it 3 times and hand it back and forward to each other. When COVID was kind of first came in and football stopped, and all the football authorities were trying to work out how they could restart football, and we basically got involved in the conversation because our system means that it's paperless. So nobody needs to hand another bit of paper so they can keep a distance. And better than that, usually there's like a club secretary who would do the paperwork for a team, and they don't even need to come to the grounds. They can stay at home, and the manager can phone them up or text them and say, right, here's the team this week, and they can then submit the paperwork remotely. So basically, although we couldn't go to grassroots football, through kind of getting involved, because people knew who we were and what we were doing, we got involved in some conversations about helping restart football using our system. What's ended up happening is a lot of pro teams have paid attention to what we're doing. So, our market would be like school teams, university teams, junior football, amateur football. So pro teams are really not in our radar at all. We had no plans to go looking for them. But what's happened through COVID is they have come to us and said, we've heard about your system, can we look at using it? So we've been signed up by Albion Rovers and Coatbridge, Stenhouse Muir, and Partick Thistle, I think. There's various teams all around who are all considering us now, where we didn't go looking for it, but it's come to us, and that actually flows down because now grassroots football is, some of it started like the Lowland League started, but other parts are kind of due to start hopefully in the middle of November. But it's all still up in the air. The grassroots teams, now that they know pro teams are using it, are far more open to taking ours. And now that they need to do track and trace for all the training sessions, they're looking around at options anyway, and we are one of the options now that they have to consider themselves. So it's kind of, it is a cliche, like it's shut one door but opened another. So, and I mean, there's a whole other layer to this. Shall I keep talking about this, or do you want to ask another question? I'm conscious of the time.
Well, there is another question from students, and it is about COVID as well, but it's about the music industry. So they've asked, do you think digital tech is where all the jobs that will be now, with the music industry taking such a huge hit from COVID? Can you see this coming back?
Well, I can see music coming back as soon as people are allowed to go to places, because, well, I love music. It's part of my life and all that. So not having gone to a live concert for 9 months now is a big deal, and especially when you think towards Christmas, there would always be a couple of things that you would maybe go to around Christmas, even the panto and all that, so that stuff.
Absolutely.
So on a kind of human level, there's a lack. Obviously, but with tech was going like that anyway. You know, like it's a growth area, because there's loads of problems that people want to try and solve with tech. So I think that it's maybe had a bit of a nudge up, you know, because of COVID. And you've probably heard this already. People say that, you know, the next 3 years worth of transformation got squeezed into like April and May this year because everybody just brought all their plans forward. So there has been an acceleration. But if you're thinking about where to be looking in terms of careers, I think tech is going to keep growing, you know, for another 5-10 years anyway. And the things that, you know, what I'd be thinking about are like sustainability. And, you know, this is something I'm interested in, which is basically that it's been a bit like the Wild West in tech. So people have kind of come out and they're just building stuff all the time. You know, we need a new feature for this, we need a new app for that. And stuff is just all getting built, but it's actually being built quickly, but not in a way that's particularly good for the planet. You know, it's like to solve a problem, rather than have a bit of a think and write a better algorithm, people just throw 10 computers at it because they're really cheap. So, you know, they just turn up the volume and processing power to cover up something which, you know, could take a bit of intelligence to solve. So what's happening is there's thousands of computers all day long burning loads of energy to save photos on your iPhone that you've not looked at for 2 years. So I think there's like, I think that the next kind of wave, as it will be the next wave of engineers coming through saying, right, thanks Grandpa, thanks for, you know, building the road, but, you know, it gets flooded every week. So how about we actually stop and do a better job of this? And I think that's, you know, because otherwise, without being too hippie about it, like, you know, the planet will kick over into being too hot to live on anyway. So
the student who asked that question,
become more pressing.
Yeah, the student who asked that question has commented like fast fashion, fast tech. So there's another question that's just come in from Ben.
Exactly, all that stuff.
Yeah. Ben's asking, he's thinking about the bands. So do you have any advice for bands wanting to gain connections and getting booked for gigs, especially for those studying at the University of Glasgow?
So, yeah, the advice is just to actually practice. Get good at it. Like, you know, like, first of all, don't do it because you want to be like in a band per se. Like, if you've got something to say or you've got music that you want people to hear, like really focus on that so that it's good. And then in terms of like booking the gigs, you know, it's 20 years since I was at the University of Glasgow. You know, we used to be able to hire the bars or the cafeteria and all that for not very much money at all, and sell 20 tickets to our pals to at least get people down. So I suppose the advice would be like, and then you could go in, like the next step out from that would be going to like King Tut's, and, you know, you would say, you know, you guarantee them that you'll sell 30 tickets, and, you know, you have to stump up that money yourself, and then go on and sell the tickets, and whatever else you sell, you keep yourself. It's just all that kind of stuff. Just kind of ploughing on with that. But I suppose the advice is, though, that you need to take the battle to the world. You know, no one's going to chap your door and say, hi there, do you want to come and play at the Barrowlands tomorrow? Yeah. It's just about, I suppose it's about enthusiasm. And then once you've got the enthusiasm to get 10 people in a room to listen to you, have something that's worth playing for them, basically.
Yeah. What about students who are thinking about setting themselves up in their own business? What advice would you give to people still at university at the moment? For how, I mean, you didn't do that until a little bit later on in your career, but I know that some of them are thinking about doing that quite early on.
Yeah. So the things to do are to, and they sound really boring and really obvious. And I say this because the first thing is I didn't do it and then went back and redid it, is have a business plan.
Yeah.
So, you know, like set out, you know, over a certain period of time. So don't say that from now till the end of time. So say that for 2 years or however long it is, I'm going to spend this much money. So work out, what it's going to cost you and to pay yourself and all that kind of stuff, so that you know how much money you've got to raise, whether you're doing it by attracting, if it's like when we started at Greenhill, I knew that I had enough money to keep me going for a month, to eat. And then I kind of started up and hit the phones and said, does anybody want a website? And, the first one came in, and that gave us enough money to do the first month. And then it just continued and continued. So, know how much, basically know what you need to survive.
Yes.
Know how much money you're going to want to try and raise overall to achieve your plan. And then just, it takes a leap of faith. So, so you just want to make sure that you've done as much work to understand what you're jumping into up front. So know if what you're selling is websites, work out who you're selling them to. Are you want to sell to Just Eat and Betfair because that's one way of doing business, or do you want to sell to 100 clothing shops in Glasgow and just skin Shopify sites for them, and be able to turn one round in a day, charge £300 for it, and do 10 in a week? You just need to work out what you're how you're planning to make your money, and then set it out, and then give it a go. And it will have to change all the time. And sometimes you might stick to it, sometimes you won't. But at least have some kind of barometer to measure whether it's working or not.
There's quite a long message that's just come in from Hasita, and I'll just read it out. So she thanks you for your presentation. She's part of a small new society called GU Biosense, which was formed last year to promote awareness and interest in biosensing technology among students. They've had an idea this semester, due to COVID and the need for socially distanced activities, to design a simple mobile app that can monitor a biomarker using the sensors inbuilt on an average smartphone. The idea was to use this as a precursor to launch a sort of biosensor design challenge. I was wondering whether you had any advice in terms of programming or app design from your experience to start something like this. Any potential contacts or useful web links you can suggest would be very useful to us. Most of them are biomedical engineers in second year, so they're still learning the basics of programming. First of all, what I would just say, Hasita, is that you do have the student enterprise team who can help you in terms of potential contacts and thinking about how to get started with this, and you could set up an incubator in the university through that team. So if you email them, or you look on the Career Service website where you can book the careers interviews, you can also book an interview there with one of the enterprise team, and they'll help you get started with that. But anything you would like to say, any advice you'd like to give them, Liam?
Well, all that stuff you're saying is great, because the kind of truth is, if you were to go out to the wider world, folk in agencies, if you gave them $10 for every time someone said, I've got an idea for an app, can I tell you about it? They would just be able to retire. It happens all the time because loads of people have ideas. And in fact, agencies themselves or folk who program, they will have the thing they're doing today, and they will have their own list of 3 ideas that they want to get on with. So trying to get into someone's bandwidth to engage with them will be the hard part. Sharing the idea and get some advice as to practically whether you should choose to do it on iOS or whatever. All that stuff is will just flow once you get talking to somebody. But it would be getting into someone's attention span to get their attention and give them advice would be the hard bit. So I think in the first instance, I would pick up the university stuff. And then one just general kind of technology piece that I would advise is that when you work out what sensors there is that you need to contact in your phone, be quite rigorous about that to start with. And the reason I say that is that I would always advise people build things for the web first. So without launching into a big tirade, if you build something as a website or a web app, but basically it's a URL that you can go to in a browser to start you on the process of using it. And that is always going to be better. It'll be cheaper to build, it'll be cheaper to maintain, and it's open to far more people, than any other thing. Now, there are limitations because You might want to try and reach sensors that a browser doesn't have access to. And then when you get to that point, then that kicks you into having to do a native app. And then you need to decide if it's Android or iOS or both. But if you do it for both, there's compromises about what you can do. So I would just want to that would be the kind of main tech thing is, have a look at what are called the HTML5 APIs. Because you'll be surprised, like a lot of people think you can't use the camera through a website. Actually, you can now. There's stuff changing all the time. You can't use the location sensors from a website. Actually, you can now if you use this API. So look up the HTML API documents, which if you just Google them, it'll come up from Mozilla, I think they might be. They'll tell you exactly what you can and can't do with a web browser. Maybe even decide that for your first go, you'll pick things that only work through the web browser. And then that means that you can get something created sooner, which then means that you can get it in someone's hands. And the sooner it's in someone's hands and it's a real thing, then the sooner you can evaluate whether it's any use or not. So that would be, we want to kind of release early, release often, iterate on the thing you've got. But that would be the smart decision. So many people, like I've been involved in, so many companies that have had an idea, gone to someone who built an app, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on building this app. It does what they wanted it to do 18 months ago when they set out, but it turns out that's not actually what people want. Right. So they then are caught in a loop of having to find another $100,000 to change it, to build it to be the thing they want. Whereas if you are smart and kind of go, well, let's start with using the web APIs, what can we get going? Even if all you learn from that is your prototype that tells you what you need to build, then you go to somebody who's going to build you the iOS version, say, and it's you're on much more solid ground.
That's brilliant. I'm sure Hasita and our student colleagues are very delighted to have that advice. Right now, there's another question I think is quite difficult, but I'll go ahead and ask it, see what you think. Where do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years' time?
So that is a good question. Still working, definitely. So I'm not, the plan with We.Soccer, say, is to grow the business to a certain size and then sell it. We have a board, we have a board of directors who are various shareholders involved. I'm the CEO, so my job is to kind of do the donkey work, do the day-to-day stuff, achieve all our targets, sign up enough people to use it, attract more investors, is our seed funding and all that kind of stuff. So basically, where I would see myself in 5 years' time is, in 5 years' time, we'd hope to be in a position where we're selling We.Soccer to Nike or someone like that. That's the 5-year plan. Beyond that, I would see myself being involved in another startup, I think. If this one, if we get this one up and running and it works, or even if it doesn't, I think what gets me is solving a real problem with technology. And that's when I look back, that's what I was doing. So, in the guitar store, we wanted to try and sell guitars to people, without having to answer the phone all the time. So we built a website to do it and then threw up a million challenges and we worked our way through them. When I worked at Tea in the Park and we wanted to, check in all these people and be able to know quickly at a glance what was happening without, getting on a bike and cycling through mud for a mile to the tent to look at the table. We worked on a really cool medical app once for Parkinson's disease sufferers, which was really great. It was able to help tell people the kind of treatment they would get and, manage their expectations and all that. So being able to kind of see a problem and then put together the people and the technology that kind of helps move that on a bit in a way that doesn't destroy the world. That, I think that's what I just want to keep doing. And then when I do retire, and who knows when we'll get to retire. But when I'm 70, my genuine ambition is to work in Asda and push the trolleys. That's what I want to do.
Just wind down a wee bit then.
Yeah, so, basically get to a position where, we're okay. And then, you know, I'd want to do something, and I just want to like still meet people, talk to people, do things. And
Excellent.
I'll go down and be the guy that says, "Hi, Frank, you know, welcome to Asda," and just shuffle about pushing trolleys. That'll be me. I'll be happy.
As long as there's not robots doing it by then.
See that.
So we've got time, I think, for just one last question. So I would just like to end by saying, if you look back at yourself at university, what do you wish that you had known then that you know now?
I wish I had a bit more confidence. That was it. So I kind of knew, like I knew in my heart what I really got me going. And it was, if I'd stopped to look, it was self-evident. Like, you know, in a morning or in a day, you know, I would go to my lecture, go to the tutorial, go to the library for a bit, you know, do a bit of this stuff to keep the wheels turning and all that. And then at like, you know, 3 o'clock, go to the rehearsal studio and practice. You know, and in order to do that practice, drag a guitar and a bit of a drum kit from one end of Great George Street all the way up the hill, down the other side to get someone else to grab another box. You know, the amount of effort and energy I put into doing, you know, something that I wanted to do. And so having the confidence to kind of admit that to myself and everyone around, and then just kind of get on and do it. I mean, I'm lucky because it worked out. You know, I ended up getting to play the music and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if I look back, being able to say to, you know, him, just don't worry, just go.
Yeah.
If that's what you want.
Hopefully people will take that on board here, that actually you're probably doing pretty well as you are right now. You're all very busy, you know, developing skills, but also doing lots of different activities that are developing you and making you hugely employable in lots of different areas. So thank you so much for that. That was really inspiring, Liam. And for students in so many different subject areas, so much useful advice today. It was also extremely interesting. You've had a really interesting career story so far, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so until you end up in Asda.
Yeah. Cool.
So thank you so much for joining us today and
pleasure.
talking about your career journey so honestly and openly. Also, thanks to the students who have come along today to listen, who participated in the event and asking some really good questions. If we did miss anyone's question, or if you think about it a wee bit later, then do email them to careers@glasgow.ac.uk and we'll pass them on to Liam. And don't forget that we do have some more Big Brave events coming up. So this afternoon at 2:30, we have the head of aerodynamics at McLaren Racing. And then on the 4th of November, as part of the science fair, we've got Dr. Kate Bishop from the Crick Institute and wildlife filmmaker Jack Randall. You'll find more information about that on the website. So thanks to everyone for coming along today. And thanks very much once again, Liam, for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.